Are you ready for rent? Do you have rental units all built and furnished? I'm not ready. That's why I made townhouses to prepare for Sims 4 for rent.
The journey to total domination begins this very evening.
One thing I immediately wanted to do when I saw the For Rent trailer was make a row of townhouses. I actually live in a townhouse myself, like in real life, so I wanted to create something familiar to me, you know? And what better way to prepare for being a property manager than to create a property to manage? Am I right? First and foremost, you gotta pick a style for your townhouses. I started off wanting to copy the style of homes you'd see in downtown Toronto. If you live in or around Toronto, for all of you people who don't live in the area, or you've been there, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's those Victorian Bay and Gable, Annex style, Tudor style, Edwardian Gable, Gothic Revival, deep red brick looking homes. I'm quite fond of the style, all of them, and I thought, hey, this wouldn't be too bad, right?
Wrong.
As soon as I started creating the shell, I knew this wasn't working out. Partially because I decided to pick such a small lot, so I couldn't really do much. But also I lacked inspiration, even though I was actively looking at photos for inspiration. Either way, this is a great jumping off point when you're creating any build in Sims 4, not just apartments or townhouses. This might be based on the styles you see in whatever world you're building in, or maybe it's based on something you saw in real life, or maybe you simply feel the need to build in a particular style and you just go for it. There are just so many different ways you can build out there that it really helps to pick a focus and do it. Go for it. So yeah, essentially my first tip is to pick a style and go with it. Right away, you're going to want to plan out the interior rooms, especially if you're working with a smaller space. And, you know, townhouses tend to be long and narrow, which is an awkward way to design for. Something I kept in mind while building these townhouses was that the interiors had to be similar, but it doesn't have to be the exact same thing. For example, in my townhouse complex in real life, there are definitely other units that have the exact same layout as mine, but most of them are slightly different, you know, with different sized rooms, different placements for stairs and closets and even rooms, particularly in the basement. It's also good to keep in mind that some units would have been renovated over the years and some of them were always just straight up different to begin with. So maybe you start off with a basic design and then the next one you're like, okay, well, they actually renovated it and now it's a little different. Maybe they took down a wall. Maybe they changed where the door is. Maybe they made a room bigger and took away another room. Maybe they added a closet using a third bedroom that they didn't use. So when building townhouses or apartments, I stick to the rule that some can be the same, some are similar, and others are just different. Sometimes it can be difficult to decide how you're going to decorate a space, especially when it's 2 or more units. I find that it's helpful to pre-plan what type of person or family will be living in each unit. Now, of course, you could go the basic route and make them all look like a show home, have that vibe to them, you know, not personalize them. And then maybe after you decide, after a while or whatever is holding you back, you decide to move Sims in, and then you can personalize it. But as someone who enjoys building, respectfully,
where's the fun in that?
I love clutter items. I love items that make homes feel lived in. It's half the fun to imagine little scenes while building, or at least it is for me. I actually find myself doing this often, like a little picnic here, and you know, maybe they're set up for an anniversary over here, or maybe this happened over there. It's just something I think about while building. In this row of townhouses, I started with the outside areas first, and I based the style of the home on that. I wanted each home to feel different. Whether or not I succeeded, it's up to you. I don't know if I did, especially for the primary bedrooms. The first one I worked on, I made the outdoor spaces vibrant gardens. I wanted it overflowing with plants. Based on that, I figured the sort of people who lived here would be whimsical, creative, and possibly had a kid or two. I created an open first floor because that's the kind of living space families tend to prefer. They have the largest kitchen out of all of the homes since I imagined the whole family cooking or baking together. The next one I worked on was one with little to no green space or gardens outside. Instead, they utilized that area as outdoor hangout spots, simply places to gather and hang out with little to no upkeep. I try to follow suit with the interior design as well. Simple and straightforward. Those were a couple of words I kept saying to myself while building. Although in the second bedroom and the spare room upstairs, I made it a bit quirky. Perhaps they have an older child, like a teenager or a young adult who lives at home and they use those spaces. And it's just a little bit more fun, a little bit more vibrant, a little bit more youthful. I like it. In the third unit, I wanted to create a space that wasn't as clean and tidy. This was sort of based on the fact that the front and backyards were a little unkept. The backyard in particular has a ton of overgrown grass and is not really a spot that you can just chill and hang out. Instead, there are some activities for a small child. This was the theme I tried to keep up with throughout the inside too. In my mind, it's focused on their small child, but is not really trendy looking. They don't really care for interior design. These are pieces that maybe they thrifted or they've been given. On top of that, the unit is one that kind of needs a little bit more work done to it. Despite the fact that it seems like this one has had a ton of work done previously, simply based on the fact that the kitchen is at the front of the house, while all the other houses have the kitchen in the back. So maybe it was renovated a couple years ago and whoever was living there just didn't keep up with the upkeep of home maintenance, or maybe it wasn't renovated that good. Our final unit was supposed to be very, very basic. I try to keep things in this vintage country chic style. This one has the least amount of living space on the main floor. That's why they're using the third bedroom as a TV room of sorts upstairs. I think this is reflected by their yards as well. It's simple with a focus on gardening. I also kept the front bedroom empty so that when Sims have moved in, there's a room to personalize, or maybe they just want to keep it empty. It's like a storage room, which hey, I feel like a lot of people have rooms like that. I sort of touched on this with the last point. However, this can be such a difficult thing to do. Each house should feel different from one another. You know how sometimes in casts you run into the same face syndrome? All your Sims end up looking the same or too similar? Yeah, well, it can happen with your builds too. It certainly happens to me. You get used to designing spaces using the same items, the same colors, the same vibes, the same everything. And in the end, they all look too similar to one another. Well, this becomes very obvious when you're doing several units in one build. When you're looking at the overview of everything, they all look like the same house, which is not what we want. You don't want each home to be the same. The same Sims aren't living throughout each unit. That's why each unit should reflect the Sims living there. Hence why it's so helpful to picture who's going to be living there or base it on Sims you've already created and their backstories and what they got going on. Honestly, I find this very difficult. I tend to fall into the habit of using items that I personally like. I don't know. It's easy to do that. It doesn't matter what the space is like. I just tend to use the exact same items that I would use in real life, which is not the best way to build sometimes. Overall, I don't feel like I did the best job here with these row of townhouses. Maybe this is something I need to practice going forward, like leaving my comfort zone and trying new things. Is that something you would watch? Should I do more build videos in the future? There you have it, a row of townhouses. Now I'm prepared for Sims 4 for rent and for being a property manager. Now all we gotta do is wait. Stay tuned for my first impression of the next expansion pack. That's going to be coming out very soon, okay? Or if you're in the future, you can always find that video on my channel. Until then, keep being you and stay happy, healthy, and hydrated. All right? Bye now.